There are moments when taking decisive action is the only option. Joseph, a 92-year-old man, was thrown out of the bank by the staff, only to be brought back by a determined cop ready to make things right. Frustration and anger coursed through Joseph as he tried desperately to access his own money. His wife was relying on him, and the thought of returning home empty-handed was unbearable. Despite Joseph's pleas, the teller stood firm, explaining that they couldn't release the funds because his ID card had expired. It had only been a week, but bank policy was clear: no valid ID, no money. The teller suggested withdrawing money from the ATM, but Joseph, who neither trusted machines nor possessed a bank card, rejected the idea. His anxiety grew, tears welling up as he faced the reality of his predicament. The situation escalated when a bank manager approached, placing a hand on Joseph's shoulder in an attempt to calm him. This gesture only fueled Joseph's frustration, leading him to shout and lash out. It was at this critical juncture that a compassionate cop intervened, determined to help the elderly man regain his dignity and access his rightful funds. What followed was an inspiring story of empathy in action, showcasing the power of kindness and justice in the face of rigid bureaucracy. Joseph's stress levels skyrocketed as he grew increasingly agitated. He shouted incessantly about needing his money, his desperation clear. The situation escalated quickly. Security stepped in, firmly grasping the old man by the shoulders and escorting him out of the bank, instructing him to return with proper identification. They couldn't grasp the depth of his desperation, dismissing him as an elderly person overreacting. Unbeknownst to them, Joseph had every reason to be scared and worried. Determined, Joseph returned, banging on the doors and demanding entry. The bank staff, concerned for his safety, called the police, not wanting to get him in trouble but fearing he might harm himself in his state of distress. Officer Caleb, nearby as his shift was ending, decided to respond to the call. Despite working all night, he felt compelled to help the elderly person in distress. Caleb hurried to the bank, where he was met with a heart-wrenching sight: an old man, fists pounding against the bank doors, face flushed with anger and tears streaming down. Begging to be let in, Joseph's desperation was palpable. Caleb knew he had to handle the situation with the utmost care and empathy. Approaching gently, Caleb introduced himself and listened to Joseph's plight. Understanding the gravity of the situation, he assured Joseph that he was there to help. With Caleb's assistance, the bank staff revisited the situation, and together, they found a way to verify Joseph's identity and release his funds. This act of compassion transformed a moment of crisis into one of understanding and relief. Highlighting the power of empathy in overcoming bureaucratic barriers, Caleb knew he had to act fast to calm Joseph down, fearing the old man might have a stroke from his agitation. As soon as Joseph saw the officer, he began to vent, accusing the bank of trying to steal his hard-earned money. Caleb understood that he needed to get the full story but also needed to defuse the situation by moving Joseph away from the bank. Calmly, Caleb asked for Joseph's name and suggested they go for a cup of coffee across the street. Over coffee, the gravity of Joseph's desperation became clear. Joseph explained that he had no other means of paying for anything, his cash was gone, and he didn't have a bank card. Without accessing his money, he couldn't buy food for himself or his wife. But the situation was even more dire. Joseph's beloved wife was gravely ill and needed medicine that he couldn't afford without withdrawing money from the bank. Joseph, despite being 94, had always managed to stay on top of things. However, he had fallen ill himself in the past 2 weeks, causing everything to spiral out of control. Normally, he kept extra cash and medicine on hand, but his recent illness had left him unable to manage their affairs. With no children and relatives living far away with their own lives, Joseph and his wife relied on a nurse who visited once a week. They had no one else to help with the daily chores and medical needs. Moved by Joseph's story, Caleb knew he had to act quickly to help the elderly couple. His compassionate approach not only calmed Joseph but also paved the way for the bank staff to reassess the situation. Working together, they found a solution to verify Joseph's identity and release the necessary funds. This act of kindness highlighted the importance of empathy and understanding, transforming a moment of crisis into one of relief and support. Joseph had always been the pillar of strength for his household, managing the finances, grocery shopping, and ensuring his wife received her necessary medications. However, the past few weeks had been especially harsh. Stricken by a severe flu, Joseph was unable to leave the house, depleting their supplies. On this fateful day, they had only enough medicine for the morning. Without accessing his funds, his wife would be left without her crucial medication, a situation that could be fatal. Additionally, they were running out of food, and Joseph's energy was still sapped from his illness. Determined to rectify the situation, Joseph mustered all his remaining strength and made his way to the bank. To his dismay, he was informed that his identity card had expired just a week prior, something he hadn't even realized amidst the chaos. Despite his unchanged appearance, the bank policy was clear: no valid ID, no money. Joseph didn't even have a driver's license to fall back on. As his vision had deteriorated, leading to the lapse of his license over a year ago. The cumulative stress of the past year had brought Joseph to the brink. Watching his wife's health decline while feeling increasingly powerless was a burden that could break even the strongest of individuals. The bank's rigid adherence to policy, although understandable, was of no help to him in his desperate situation. There was no way he could resolve his identification issues on that day. Caleb, moved by Joseph's plight, realized the urgent need for compassion and immediate action. He gently guided Joseph away from the bank and listened intently as the old man poured out his worries. Caleb's empathy and determination to help turned a moment of despair into one of hope. Working together with the bank staff, they found a way to verify Joseph's identity and release the needed funds. This heartwarming resolution underscored the power of kindness and human connection. Caleb's intervention not only provided immediate relief but also restored Joseph's faith in the community's support. It was a testament to the impact of empathy and the difference it can make in someone's life. The department that issued identity cards was all the way across town, a journey that would take Joseph hours by bus, time he didn't have. He hung his head, sipping his coffee and trying to hide the tears welling up. This felt like the final straw. Joseph was utterly defeated, his heart heavy with despair. But sometimes, it's in our lowest moments that others step in to lift us up. Caleb, though exhausted, knew he couldn't rest without doing everything possible to help. He invited Joseph to come with him and stopped by the police station to get his private vehicle. With 2 days off duty ahead, Caleb had all the time he needed to assist his new friend. They drove to the licensing department, where Caleb's uniform opened doors. He spoke to a supervisor, explaining Joseph's dire situation. The supervisor, moved by the plight of a 94-year-old man unable to buy food or medicine, agreed to help. Although Joseph couldn't receive a new identity card on the spot, it would take 4 to 6 weeks to arrive by mail. They issued him a temporary ID. Caleb hoped this would suffice at the bank, though the bank's strict adherence to policy left room for doubt. Upon returning to the bank, Caleb presented Joseph's temporary ID. This time, the bank staff, now fully aware of the old man's predicament and moved by Caleb's determination, agreed to make an exception. They verified the temporary ID and finally released the funds. In the end, what seemed like an insurmountable challenge was overcome through compassion and perseverance. Caleb's willingness to go above and beyond, coupled with the bank staff's eventual empathy, transformed a moment of despair into one of hope and relief. Joseph could now provide for his wife and himself, a testament to the power of community and the difference a single act of kindness can make. With his new temporary ID in hand, Joseph and Caleb headed back to the bank. Caleb was anxious. It was the one day the bank closed early, and they were cutting it close. As they drove, Joseph shared stories of his life, tales filled with wisdom and inspiration. Caleb found himself deeply moved, gaining more from their time together than he had ever expected. However, his worry that they might fail at the final hurdle gnawed at him. The staff had thrown the elderly man out of the bank earlier, but now, with Caleb by his side, they were determined to set things right. They arrived at the bank just as the staff was about to close the doors. Refusing to accept defeat, Caleb rushed inside, pleading with them to hear him out. He explained the situation, and then Joseph, with heartfelt sincerity, apologized to the teller he had shouted at and to everyone else present. He admitted his shame and regret for his outburst, emphasizing that he had never treated anyone so poorly in his life. Moved by their genuine remorse and determination, the bank manager decided to make an exception. The bank was technically still open for 5 more minutes, minutes usually reserved for closing procedures. Instead, those minutes were spent helping Joseph. They verified his temporary ID, provided him with the cash he so desperately needed, and even issued him a bank card for future emergencies. Caleb had already done so much, but his kindness didn't stop there. As they walked out of the bank, Joseph thanked him profusely, overwhelmed by the cop's compassion and dedication. It had been a long time since Joseph had encountered such kindness, and it restored his faith in humanity. Caleb's actions not only helped Joseph in a moment of crisis but also left a lasting impact, reminding us all of the profound difference empathy and perseverance can make in someone's life. Caleb had endured a long night and must have been exhausted, but his kindness was unwavering. He laughed off his fatigue, knowing there was no way he would abandon Joseph now, having lost his own grandfather the previous year. Caleb cherished the chance to spend time with someone who reminded him of his beloved grandpa. With no pressing commitments, he decided to continue doing something truly good. First, Caleb took Joseph to the pharmacy to get his wife's medication, then to a grocery store to buy food. Understanding that Joseph might be too tired to cook after such an eventful day, Caleb treated the elderly couple to takeout. This was a rare luxury for Joseph and his wife, who had to be frugal with their pension, especially with the high costs of medication and living expenses. As they drove home, Joseph felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. His wife had been too sick to go out, and their financial situation rarely allowed for any extras. But today was different, thanks to Caleb's generosity. For Joseph, having his wife by his side was more valuable than anything else. When they arrived home, the nurse was just leaving, and Joseph's wife had started to worry. Her concern melted into relief and happiness as she met the young officer who had done so much for them. Caleb finally headed home to get the rest he deserved, while Joseph and his wife spent a quiet evening together. Later that night, after Caleb had long gone, Joseph wanted to ensure they had enough money left for their needs. As he opened the envelope containing the cash, he was met with an unexpected surprise. Nestled inside was more than just the money he had withdrawn, there was also an additional amount. A gift from Caleb. Joseph could hardly believe the generosity. Caleb's actions had not only provided immediate relief but had also restored their hope and faith in the kindness of others. This extraordinary day had turned what began as a crisis into a heartwarming tale of empathy and human connection. Caleb's unwavering dedication and generosity had made a lasting impact, proving that even small acts of kindness can create profound changes in people's lives. As Joseph settled in for the evening, he opened the envelope to count the money, wanting to ensure they had enough for the rest of the month. To his shock, he found all the money he had withdrawn from the bank still inside. He had given Caleb the envelope earlier to pay for the food and medicine, assuming it would be easier for the young man to handle the transactions. Throughout the exhausting day, relinquishing control had been a relief for Joseph. Now, as he called his wife over to show her the envelope's contents, he revealed something extraordinary. Caleb had used none of the withdrawn money. Instead, he had paid for their food and medicine out of his own pocket. This act of generosity was a blessing beyond anything Joseph could have imagined. But Caleb's kindness didn't end there. Over the next few years, until both Joseph and his wife passed away, Caleb frequently visited the couple. He helped them with groceries, assisted with chores, and provided companionship. For Joseph, What had begun as a day filled with despair and frustration transformed into one of the greatest blessings of his life. Caleb, who had lost his grandparents, found a new sense of family with Joseph and his wife. Their bond grew strong, illustrating the profound impact of simple, heartfelt actions. Through his unwavering support, Caleb brought comfort and joy to their lives, proving that kindness truly changes lives. This heartwarming story reminds us of the incredible transformations that can occur when we take the time to reach out and help others.